It is 2:30. That's the time that was noticed and posted for our work session. So I'm going to call it to order. This is Tuesday, October the 11th, 2022, and it's 2:30 p.m. We're in the Board of Supervisors hearing room, Melody Lane. Any item on this agenda is open for discussion. We'll begin with the roll call. District 1.
Crosby is here.
District 2, Supervisor English is present. District 3.
Supervisor Judd is here.
We have a complete board. Members of the public may also attend this meeting by Microsoft Teams, computer or mobile app, or by phone by calling 602-609-7513 or 888-680-6714. Conference ID 603-941-73#. If you have trouble accessing this meeting remotely, call 520-432-9200 for direction. Work sessions are a time for county staff to inform and discuss agenda items with the Board of Supervisors, and public comments will not be taken. And I want to emphasize that again for this group, that we did have sort of an open forum for you to be able to speak this morning. That does not happen at work sessions. The people that are speaking at work sessions were invited by either Ms. Judd, who asked for this work session, or by Tom, who asked for this work session. So I believe there is one member from the public that's included, in the conversation. Having said that, I asked each one of them who was going to start out on this, and since Tom was here and Peggy was distant, he said let her start. So we'll start out with Ms. Judd, having asked for this
Initially
work session. I'm going to turn it over to you right now and let you sort of tell us where we go next with this.
Okay. Everybody, welcome. Thank you for being here for this work session. This is not necessarily a result of anything recent. Today we've heard lots of things about it happening in 2016 and it happened in 2020. This is something that the need to hold a work session to talk about an additional hand count of ballots on top of our already perfect system that, and I said it's perfect, but there are people that aren't sure that their votes were counted. There are people that had discrepancies, that their ballots were lost or that there wasn't a proper update made, and they weren't there. They weren't available. Their vote was not available to be voted on. And I believe that there's enough people in our communities, as indicated this morning. I took a tally. It was fairly equal. There were a few more that wanted the hand count than didn't. I have emails. There are a few more that didn't want the hand count that did. Responding to those, there's been a lot of good conversation about this. This is not to replace any machine counting or any procedure we're doing with a hand count of ballots. It's not a replacement. It is a group of people that have volunteered their time. And the way I understand it, if I could just get this out at the very beginning, we would need Democrats and Republicans, other parties that would normally be represented in whatever percentage, would need a mixed group of people to sit and hand count the ballots. There are a lot of volunteers at this point. I'm not willing, I can't make that presentation because I don't have that, but I believe I've asked Dr. Patterson to come with that information. I do know that the effort we're making here is not because we have a poor election system or a poor election director or misunderstandings in our election department. We're happy about that. What has been asked by the citizens, and I'm supporting it, is that there be, for this one time, this hand count of elections, and possibly things can be made, changes can be made in the legislature to make other things seem more fair or transparent. But at this election, this meeting is simply about that. Having everything operate as normal, having a group of volunteers volunteer their time, become trained, and sit to hand count the ballots. More of an audit of what the results of the election machines are, but a simultaneous audit. More that than actually determine the outcome of the election. I feel like sometimes people have to be involved and have to actually put their shoulder to the wheel and make things happen, or at least have a part in what's happening. And I feel like that these individuals that have come together to support a full hand count of this election in our county are heroes in a way. They've put their heart and soul into having this happen. And I think it's only fair that we listen to them and take their advice. I've seen them accomplish a lot, and I'm very pleased with their results. I'm also very interested in what the opposition has to say, and we've heard plenty of that on this very day. I am incredibly excited about possibly doing something in Cochise County that's not normally done, and they might say we don't even need it here, but wouldn't it be nice if a group of people at very low cost to the county could have their participation, have themselves known, and accomplish something, and at the very least, put their own minds to rest. So I rest my case and would like to pass it on to whoever is going to speak next.
I think that's you, Mr. Carson.
Okay. Mr. Mattis, could we have my work session request up there, please? And scroll down to where it says agenda item text. That's fine. And you can see where it says department's next steps if approved. So if I were to have my way in this whole thing, the part that says department's next steps would be the agenda item request or the agenda item language for such an agenda item if we should vote on it in the near future. Besides that, you notice where it says background, the word in the bottom sentence, it says a total countywide hand count that matches the machine count. So it was never my intention of getting rid of the machines and replacing the machines with only a hand count. That concludes my remarks at this time.
Well, it seems as though you are asking for something, and usually we like to put a time frame on that, and we like to put a cost on that. So have you tried to figure out how many days that would take and how many people and how many hours?
Mr. Stevens for the logistics. I believe the cost will be very low because there are something like 140 volunteers so far that have volunteered to be counters. And what was the other item besides cost? Oh, the time period, as soon as possible. Start this in process, get the vote as soon as possible.
No, my question of time was, how long do you think that it would take to count all of these?
There's time. We're looking at almost a month right now. Or not quite, but pretty close.
No, but I'm talking, we won't have anything to count till after the election. How long do you?
No. Mr. Stevens will address more of the logistics and.
Okay, we'll put it to Mr. Stevens then.
Mr. Stevens.
Who's our recorder.
Can everybody hear me? All right.
Yes, sir.
Let me start off with, I was asked to produce this presentation. Happy to do it. The data I'm using is from our websites, either the recorder website or elections website, and it's based off of the last two elections we've done. The primary we just completed and the 2020 general election. These are the numbers from 2020, just to give you an idea of what we had. 82,000 active voters, 12,000 inactive, and roughly 61,000 people voted. It's an all-time high in this county, which was that way throughout the entire state. Every county had all-time high. So it's a good reference point. I don't know if we'll hit that high again. Tim? We have two types of voting locations, which starts tomorrow. If you're all interested, you come and vote in my office. It's roughly a month of early voting. Or in 2020, we have 17 vote centers for election day voting. Had we had precinct-based voting, we'd have 49 precincts. With redistricting, that number's jumped to 54 precincts, still 17 vote centers. Tim? Should have went with a larger amount. I've been asked a few questions about cost. We spent roughly $1 million on the equipment we're using now. That was done, I believe, in 2015. I don't see any heads nodding. Rich, nothing. So there's always a cost to an election. It's just where you want to spend the money. We use 17 vote center locations. It takes people to operate those vote centers. Personally, I don't do that. It's the elections department, so I can't tell you how many it takes. And then there's ballots. The other cost would be if you went to, one precinct. This was based on doing the hand count before the election day. There's two types. Either do them now up to election day or do a validation one after election day. And this was scheduled, this was developed as if we were doing it for the election. It would take more people and more space. But again, if you don't have the cost of the machines, you can use volunteers. Some of that is in statute now. We use early boards, but it would have to be some type of statute or some procedure or policy that had to be developed on how we do the hand count. Voting methods. The first three are the ones that I deal with. Well, 3 and number 5. If you're overseas or military, you can vote. These are the actual numbers from 2020 and the primary. You can see a huge drop off. You can vote in my office for roughly the month. You have early votes. We had 44,000 for 2020, 21,000 for the primary. Election day voting, 9,400 and 6,200 for the primary. And then provisional ballots. These are the ones that still have to be validated by my office before they're counted. Tim? There's been some talk about there's a lot of races on all these ballots. For the primary, there's roughly 390 ballot styles. I picked Benson since it's 1, 2, and 3 in precincts. Those are the 5 types of ballots Benson could have had. You get Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, city only or Fed only. They had 17 unique or 17 statewide or countywide races on each ballot. The 2 you see up were 2 city races, mayor, city council. That was for the primary. So those ballots are basically identical. There's a slight difference. So if you try to hand count those, say if you counted Benson together, you could do the 3 precincts at one time and not 1 precinct. So that would reduce personnel and cost. For the 2022 general, I did Benson again. There's 31 ballot races on there, and the 1 is a school board. I think that's St. David. And one question that came up is, once we validate the ballots, the early ballots out of our office, they can be tabulated. We usually wait until there's a group to do. So we have nearly a month that you can tabulate all the early ballots before election day. That was one of the concerns I got also was there's no time to do this. We don't wait till election day. If you remember the numbers that come out at 8 o'clock at night, those are all early ballots. The precincts or the voting centers haven't reported yet. Those are the ones that come out about 9 o'clock, 9:30, whenever they can get the information back. Okay. This to give you an idea of the average daily count of the ballots we had. For the general 2020, we average, and these are work days. These aren't, I didn't count Saturdays or Sundays in this. Roughly 2,350 ballots a day came through my office for early voting. The vote centers on average had 555 a day, and that's election day only. Had we gone to precinct level voting, been 193. For the primary of 2022, we averaged about 1,100 ballots in early voting, 366 at a vote center, and 115. That's election day voting. I think that's very doable when you want to do that by hand at the site. We also have 5 days after the election, we have to stay open for carrying signatures. So if you send a signature and we don't accept it initially, you have to 5 days after the election to come in and fix it. So that does gives us, gives us time to still count. So I think I covered anything. Is there any other questions you three might have?
Something that was occurring to me, I had no idea that you were thinking about going ahead and counting the early ballots as soon as they come in by hand count. I mean, that means people would be sitting here looking at the ballots that have already been.
Correct.
And you think the word wouldn't get out?
Well, you could take precautions, but yeah, that would be a problem. We have one person that knows the total now, and that's the election director. She tabulates all the ballots, and they do it weeks before the election day. If you had a group of people tallying ballots, they would be in one location. Say they're in Benson. Yeah, they would know the total in Benson. They wouldn't know the rest of the county. People in Wilcox wouldn't know what Benson's doing. So yeah, there are concerns with that. Just like there is with how many people you're going to have. Usually you set up in groups of 3. So you got a caller and 2 writers, but you can rotate them around also. But that is a concern. Mr. Crosby?
Could you tell us about what we discussed here a few minutes ago, the vote or the cast vote record, and why the cast vote record is important?
The cast vote record, when the machine tabulates the ballot, it takes an image of the front and back of ballot, and it makes a 3rd copy. That is machine-generated ballot. For the Dominion equipment, which we don't have, it looks kind of like computer code, but you can read it. It tells you how the machine picked who won that race. We use ES&S. It's the same thing. You'll have the race for, say, recorder. And it would say, Stevens, he wins, that kind of thing, for each vote. So you can use that record to verify against what the machine saw when you fed the ballot through. Does that make sense? Probably not. Does? See some heads. So as it goes through, it takes a digital image of the front, the back, and then the record it makes, and the machine tabulates its record it made, not what it just took an image of.
Okay, so the cast vote record can be extrapolated by the machine-produced data.
The equipment we use, yes, it's in the machine right now.
Okay. Can it also be produced by a hand count?
The vote cast record?
Yes.
No, because that's the machine-generated
Thank you.
product.
I appreciate that.
Ms. Judd, do you have any questions? I can't see you, so I don't know if you got a quizzical look on your face or not.
I always have a quizzical look on my face. I just have a question. Very good information. Thank you, by the way. Comment first. So your proposition is that those 555 possible votes at a vote center or somewhere around there is that we would have a team of counters at the vote center to count, or in a location adjacent to the vote center. Would that require some of the person who has custody of those ballots to go with the hand counters to see that that's done? How would that look? What would that look like?
I think I understood your question. You'll have to have separate facility for them to count the ballots.
Okay.
Obviously secured, somewhat soundproof, but you wouldn't have to start at 6 in the morning with 550 records. You could start at 2 in the afternoon and start counting also. But
Okay.
that is a concern that you would need extra space at the vote centers. Correct.
Okay. But ideally, they would be kept in the vote center, just extra room at the vote center.
Yeah, that's what that number is for, is if you had hand tabulation on election day at the vote center, it would average 555 in 2020. Some are higher, obviously, averages. But if you went to the precinct, it'd be 193. And one thing that comes out is you could combine precincts, like I illustrated in Benson. You could have one facility with 3 precinct voting in there. You come in, if you're precinct 1, you go to the left, precinct 2 is in the center, precinct 3 is to the right, and then it's all in one location, and that will minimize your cost and space constraints also.
And this, when we're looking at the precinct level for voting, we're actually talking about something far in the future, not in this exact election year.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out
Yeah.
to show the difference, that had we done it by precinct, the number would be greatly less.
Okay.
Did you have any other information that you wanted to give to the board, Ms. Judd? I understood that you wanted was it a Dr. Patterson?
Could we have him speak? He's going to speak to the public's participation and where they are in their thinking and in their planning, because
this is your and Tom's show. This is your work session. So
okay, Dr. Joseph Patterson, if thank you, recorder David Stevens, thank you very, very much.
Joseph Patterson, 2872 Palmer Drive, Sierra Vista.
did you have a presentation for us?
Yep. No time limit.
No time
Yet.
Well, I think one thing that I would like to make clear is this is in no way is anybody trying to accuse anybody of doing anything wrong here. We are not accusing or saying that we don't respect our elections department here. This has nothing to do with that. What we're trying to do is to realize the real situation that we live in, which is a situation in which there is distrust of the system. And that distrust is causing division, even to the point that it's causing hatred. This should not be. It doesn't have to be. I'm not interested in 2020. All we're trying to say is, let's reestablish trust, try to reestablish unity with the people. Everybody find results that everybody trusts, accept them, and then move on. And let's get over this fighting, this bickering. I mean, this is just totally about trust in our vote. And there's nothing that would make us happier than to find that at the end of this process that they matched completely. I mean, that is what we really want to see. If we don't find that, then it served that purpose as well. But we realize, so that's why we're pushing the initiative. That's why we would like to see it happen. We do have 140 plus volunteers who are ready to count, volunteers who are ready to, today, we've got the addresses, phone numbers, emails, all that, to help in any way we can, because we know this creates an extra burden on the elections office. So any way that we can help and volunteer, participate, we're happy to do that. We just want to restore trust. And that isn't here right now. That's the reality of the situation. So we would like to see a motion to move forward if I understand Mr. Stevens correctly, would be to move forward with the attitude that this is doable if we put our mind to it. Maybe how it's to be done. That's not my ballpark. I don't understand the logistics. I don't pretend to. But we can move forward. What we would like to see is to have the board move and make a motion to proceed with this initiative, assuming that it is feasible, and then approve it in such a way so that when the final count is done, regardless of when the hand count takes place, that the hand count is completed before certification of the results. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. We know we have a limited time span here to work with. And so we know that we can't delay if we want to have this succeed. We have to move forward, and hopefully that action would begin today. And if some unforeseen something happens down the road, then so be it. But at least we're moving. I think another interesting thing, we were talking about it, is there is a requirement by statute, I believe, that requires that each county have an emergency backup voting system that could be utilized if the machines go down for any reason. For whatever reason, it becomes an optional. What are you going to do? And as I understand it, the state requires that every county have this plan. So I feel confident that we have a plan, and that plan should spell out the procedures for doing this. And as an adjunct to accomplishing this purpose, we could also test and prove the reliability of our backup plan. I mean, we're neighbors with people from SSBEC, and we've been told several times that we are on the brink of rolling blackouts, and over which we have no control. So what if that were to happen? I mean, what if we would have a blackout, whatever. But the point being is this could be an opportunity to test that backup plan that the county has and prove that it's viable, that it works. So 2 birds with 1 stone. So that's all I have for right this moment.
Well, I don't want to burst your bubble or anything, but, work sessions are not to have decisions made. Work sessions are for information. So there will be it would have to be agended and notice to the public if that were going to be a decision to be made. It won't happen today. Today was information gathering.
Okay. Very good. It could be done on an emergency basis though, right?
If the county attorney would sign off on something as an emergency, and I think that's not a decision I would make. It would be whether it legally is an emergency to do something in a given period of time.
Well, it's just a matter of what you're going to call it. You can say it an extreme priority instead of an emergency if you, for instance, didn't think it involved risk to life and limb and property and so on.
I think it would depend on whether the county attorney indicated that we could do it in an expedited manner as an emergency meeting.
But that we make the decisions, not the attorney.
Oh, okay.
And I think that's another important point. I think that Mr. Stevens' point is it's doable. It can be done. But I think at this late date, if it's going to be done, I think we really need to have an attitude of cooperation. Yeah, let's work together on this and get it done. Let's act like we want to get it done. Let's do it.
Madam Chair, your point is well taken that what we are having a meeting about today right now is consensus, not a vote today.
Right. So do you have other information to bring to the board?
Basically, if you would care to repost my work session request again, Mr. Maddox. It's very simple. My agenda item would read as department next steps, and I would like that to be as soon as possible. And that will depend on me having consensus.
Ms. Judd, do you have any
I-
further information for the board?
I have to agree with his proposed motion or whatever that's going to be there, agenda item, that that we do advise the department to take the steps in the right direction to be able to do this total hand count. Mr. Patterson's point was very well taken, that this is something we should be prepared to do anyway. We can look at this as something that's going to be participated in by the community, as I mentioned before, people that really want to volunteer their time and see this happen. And it doesn't necessarily have to happen before we call the election, or before, well, not call the election, but before we know the results of the election. The machines will figure that out while the counting is going on. The counting will be continued until it's completed, and that will be compared to the machines. And I have a very strong feeling that it's going to be very, very close, like 100% we hope, but we all know that hand counting has limitations as well. People are saying machines might have limitations, but I'm going to say right here that hand counting might be less accurate than machines, but it'll at least give us a really, really close comparison. And I think that there's a fair number of people in our communities that will be buoyed up by that and given the satisfaction that their vote really does count, because I know I've seen it happen for years. Like I said, 20 years ago, people were starting to think, does my vote really count? And we were having to explain that to them. Yes, it really counts. So I want you to know that this is really important to me too, because of these citizens that feel like maybe they just don't quite trust those machines. And I get it. Many of them don't have smartphones still, or some of them still don't use computers at home. So maybe it is hard to trust a machine, but it would be good to do this exercise. And the point he made about it being, can we even accomplish a hand count like that? If there was an emergency, if there was a need to accomplish a hand count, let's let ourselves have that experience. I don't think that that's a bad thing at all. So, I think everything that's been presented today makes a lot of sense. It was going to be a little bit of work and a little bit of thinking within the boundaries of the law, not necessarily outside the box, but thinking about how can we make this work. We've been given great information. I would like to see our elections department and those others that could become involved, even volunteers, put their heads together and see how we can make this happen.
Madam Chair, I share Ms. Judd's expectation of a 100% agreement between the machines and a hand count.
Okay, it looks as if certainly a majority of the board is wanting to look at this, and I've certainly never said I'm willing to look at something, but I think in order to make this feasible and doable, you need to put more information together instead of speculation before you bring it to the board. Like who's going to do what, and is the elections department, what time do they have left in order to put this all together? So give me some specifics of how this would work.
I would like the vote to occur the day after tomorrow.
If I may, Madam Chair.
Yes.
So I know early on, Recorder Stevens and Supervisor Judd, we had a conversation. And also I know the work session request by Supervisor Crosby. The problem that always occurs is, does the board have the power and authority to do this?
Yeah.
So, and I've asked Recorder Stevens, Supervisor Judd, and Supervisor Crosby, where in the statute does it indicate that the board has the power and authority to move forward on this? Because the statute is created by the legislature, which Recorder Stevens was a part of, and they develop and pass. And then the Secretary of State creates an election procedure manual, and that we have to follow that by law. And if we fail to follow that by law, then that's a crime, a misdemeanor. So I don't know where the power and authority lies to then move forward on this.
If it isn't precluded, you have, if what you're talking about is not precluded by the law, I would still like the vote to be the day after tomorrow. And you have till then to come up with whatever you think precludes it.
Well, and if I may, and Ms. Roberts, I might need your assistance, but the preclusion is that the powers listed in the statute of what the powers of the board are regarding elections, and it says establish, abolish, and change election precincts, appoint inspectors and judges of elections, canvass election returns, declare the results, and issue certificates thereof. And that is the powers of the board. ARS 11-251-3.
So, Madam Chair, in
Yes.
the elections and procedures manual, in the elections section 16-621, it does identify the proceedings at the counting center. Each of these in section 16 in the revised statutes says that the Board of Supervisors or other officer in charge of elections, it doesn't necessarily say if you have another officer in charge of elections, the Board of Supervisors has no role, but all proceedings at the counting center shall be under the direction of the Board of Supervisors or other officer in charge of elections and shall be conducted in accordance with the approved instructions and procedures manual issued pursuant to section 16-452. So that's mostly discussing that both parties be represented when they observe at the counting center, but it definitely delineates that a counting center can be present and should be present. That is where we verify that our machines are doing properly with the 5% hand count. I don't find anywhere that precludes that has to be a 5% hand count, but that might be somewhere for us to look. I mean, it's allowed to be a 5% hand count. That's enough, but maybe we could do more in that setting or in another setting that qualifies under that statute.
Seems as though we're talking legalities here, so maybe we need to have a chime in from the county attorney.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Under the powers it's specifically given to the board under the statute, and we have a panoply of election statutes. None of them specifically address the board's ability to determine a hand count. We have the statutes and we have the elections procedures manual. In the elections procedure manual, there is no authority there for you to do an independent hand count. The only mention of the hand count besides the post hand count that's there is should there be a failure of the machines and there has to be an alternate that's there. There's nothing that allows for a separate process within the elections procedures manual, nor is it within the statutes that give the board any power to do this.
So if there were a failure, that would be determined by the, then the governor may say, okay, your county has failed, you have no electricity, your machines are broken, whatever. Then we would quickly put together a group that would hand count our ballots. Do we have a procedure for that? Do we know who that
Election-
group would be?
The Elections Procedure Manual contemplates a failure of the tabulation system, and that is when a hand count could be implemented under the statutes and the Election Procedure Manual, but not separately because there's one to be desired to double check a machine count.
There's other parts of the statute that says the Board of Supervisors or other authorities shall conduct a class for instruction of inspectors and judges. But it also mentions that would be for hand counting as well, for the counting center election officials. And that can't be more than 45 days before the election. So we would still be okay to train county officials under the statute. I know that when you look at Section 11 in the Arizona Revised Statutes, we're very, very limited. But we're mentioned in many, many articles under general provisions through the polling place procedures. We're responsible for a lot of things when it comes to elections. And I know we've given our authority away to Lisa Mara, who's amazing and she can handle it. And I appreciate her for that. But it's something that we still are responsible for. And I don't find why we have to stick to number 11 when we're mentioned so many times in 16. So
Whatever power you've ceded over to Lisa Mara on behalf of the board, Lisa still, as the elections director, has to follow state statutes. There is a number of state statutes that address many, many things that the board is responsible for, and none of them address hand counting of ballots.
Sometimes you ask for legal help and it doesn't always give you the answer that you like, but
you're right.
you have to remember that our county attorney office represents the board. And if we go against the county attorney's office, then we have no one to represent us. So we depend very highly on the county attorney's office being able to give us accurate information that we can follow and that we can count on. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, Mr. Patterson, you may be seated if you desire, if you had further comments.
Can I make another comment?
Certainly.
I appreciate the legal opinion. Yeah, I'm not an attorney, obviously. In my research, I couldn't find anything that's prohibitive of hand counts anywhere. It's not prohibited. And if I understand the background of all this correctly, what happened, we were hand counting for years and years and years. Then the machines came along, picked up steam, and states started to use the machines. They were more efficient, more accurate, whatever. So they picked up on that. And so a group of people went to Arizona and they said, gee, we would like to use machines. And so the legislature said, okay, well, we're going to send out a search party and we're going to find 3 different types of machines that we think are reliable and verifiable. And if you want to, you can use these 3 machines. If you want to. There was no requirement there to use the machines. If you want to. So nowhere does it say that people are hand counting now. Gee, you can't do it anymore. It's over. No, the option was left out there and counties could either accept or decline to use the system. And so the hand count has never been, the right to do a hand count as I see it has never been taken away. It's always been an option. Even the backup system proves what I'm saying. It's a backup option. I mean, so hand counts can be done. I mean, I'm just saying, I don't know of anything that prohibits hand counts.
Madam Chair, we don't work on necessarily on statutes that's going to prohibit everything. You are giving express authority under the statutes to do certain things. You are not given express authority for the hand count. The way the statutes are written and the way the election procedure manual is written, it is to for the use of tabulation equipment. Unless those statutes specifically give you the right to do a hand count in addition to that, you're not authorized under the statutes to do it. I understand what everyone here is asking for, but your recourse is really not to this Board of Supervisors. Your recourse is to go to your state legislatures and tell them what it is that you want so they can build it into the statutes.
Let me intervene here just a little bit to help you and the public understand that we are a part of the state. They created us, so we're a child of state government. They specifically, and in no uncertain terms, tell us over and over and over, even if it's a good idea, you cannot do it unless we have told you specifically that you can do that. So many times there's a misunderstanding from the public of something that they want us to do. And, well, you could do that. You know, it wouldn't be that expensive, aside from the hand count. So I guess what I'm saying to you is, if our attorneys can't find a way that it's in there already, that doesn't mean that we're saying to you it's a bad idea. What we're saying to you is we don't have the authority to do that, because every authority that we have at county government is given to us specifically, not generally, but specifically. So sometimes that's hard for the public to understand why we can't do certain things and we do other things.
I could respond. I think I guess my point is the state never has taken away our right to do hand counts. It's never taken that right away. All it's done is said, if you want to use machines, use them. So everybody jumped on the bandwagon, I guess, and everybody said, let's go for the machines. And so everybody's using machines. That doesn't mean that the state requires that those machines be used. It doesn't mean to me that the county can't say, we want to do a hand count. You can't take away that right. You haven't taken it away. I mean, you have to pass legislation to actually take that away. That would be my point.
Do you have any new information, Ms. Judd or
No, I sure don't.
Mr. Crosby?
I appreciate everybody's participation. Mr.
I don't either. I'm still encouraged that whether we're successful in completing this 100% hand count alongside of our machine count, that is more of just a simultaneous audit. I think that it's a worthy endeavor to look into. I think we could get from the Attorney General, let's say, an opinion that says, it's okay, go ahead, Cochise County. But we shouldn't just say, no, sorry, we're not going to do it. We do that a lot. And I just think that that's, in this case, I don't get where we would be breaking a law if we chose to train a group of volunteers and put them in the driver's seat for a minute, hand counting. There would have to be some training and there would have to be some understandings, as if when you're sitting on a jury, you don't go out and talk about what you're doing, that they can sign disclosures and things like that. And I don't know that this is something we can't look into. I feel very strongly that we can. And if we're not successful this year, if we don't get quite to that 100% hand count on election day, because it is only 3.5 weeks away, if we aren't successful, we have gotten to a point where we're going to be a lot more influential in the legislature. We're going to say, look, we can do it. We need the laws changed. But if we don't even try, then we have not done anything. And I just think we need to engage these volunteers where they are, and also hope we can get volunteers from the other party as well. That I think that's important.
The other party?
Well, what I'm
So all
saying
your
is
volunteers
these
are
are
from one
mostly
party?
Republicans. We need a, just like every other election procedure, we need an equal representation.
Of course.
So that's what I'm
You wouldn't do it any
saying.
other way. I think what you're asking for, tell me if I'm wrong, you are challenging that the county attorney may not be exactly telling you what you want to hear, and you want to hear it from the attorney general. So are you asking us to propose to the attorney general whether it's acceptable or not, whether it's allowable or not? Is that what you're asking for? Because that seems to be the first step. If it's, is it
That's
doable
what
or
I'd
not?
like to do. Is it doable? It is vague in the statutes. I realize we have certain authority to do certain things, but when that authority is taken away a little bit here and there, and it's not usurped, but just kind of avoided because they replaced it with machines, they replaced our typical accounting with machines. Uh, it wasn't literally cut off. Mr. Pedersen's comment is accurate. Did they say no more hand counting? Absolutely not, except for the 5% to check the accuracy of machines. Well, they didn't ever say that. So the procedure manual at one time included probably a lot about hand counting because it's all we had. We've switched, but we don't, I don't know that it's illegal. I would say that it's not illegal for us to
So that's what
pursue
I'm
it.
asking you, is the first step would be to find out, is it legal or not?
No, the first step is to put it to a vote.
Well, today I understand we're going to direct the staff to find out some things and to move forward as far as they can. We're not going to say we definitely are going to have this happen by this date. There is a few housekeeping items. I don't think we can actually vote today without having it on an agenda. We
No,
can't
we can't.
vote. The public hasn't had a chance to know we were going to vote on it.
Madam
So
Judd, when are you willing to put it to a vote?
as soon as we know that it's good to do it, and I think we could find that out within 24 hours. But we can't vote in 24 hours because there's not time to put it on a agenda and have it properly noticed. So
That's why I said the day after tomorrow. But, you know, even if you want to alter the, what I have up there on the screen as department's next steps, if you come up with something that is in that direction, I'll back you.
Madam Chair,
Chair?
just to point out again, this board has no authority independent of the statutes and what's in the Secretary of State Election Procedure Manual. The procedure manual contemplates the tabulation. There are no specific statutes that give the board the authority to hand count. In line with the Purcell doctrine that came out of that case, we are 3.5 weeks away from election. The Purcell doctrine says you don't change procedures that close to election due to voter confusion. And due to voter confusion, that creates an increased liability exposure for the county. So these are things that the board also should consider when you're talking about this in the work session. Again, today is a work session. There's not an agenda, there's not an item on an agenda, and there's no vote or action to be taken today other than to consider the direction in which the county is going.
Thank you, Matt. The Purcell has to do with voters and voting. It does not have to do with counting.
Purcell has a broader implication than just to the voters, and the theme that comes out of Purcell, which is the point of law, is you do not make changes to your election system this close to the election.
There's no change occurring. The same procedure is in place.
Everybody wants to be a lawyer.
Madam
Tell us
Chair?
what the law is saying. I think that direction has to be given to
Let's figure
staff.
out what Madam Judd says the direction is,
Madam-
because she's the one who's going to determine it. That's right.
Madam Chair,
Okay.
Kathy, our treasurer, I believe, is wanting to speak.
Well, I don't necessarily want to speak, but I was wondering, am I allowed to ask a question as a public person? Yeah, I don't know how it works in a work session, and I didn't file a request to speak.
No, questions are not allowed from the public in a work session. The public does not have a right to participate during the work session.
Okay, thank you.
I could just add one more comment. There isn't a law against an emergency backup plan.
And And I am willing to accept, if we can get that second opinion from the Attorney General, I'm willing to accept that this may not be possible this year. I'm just sure, I'm so sure of this, of it being possible. It's very hard for me to, yes, listen to our wonderful attorney there. It's like, oh, quit telling us we can't. But I get that. I get that there's laws that govern these sort of things and the Purcell Doctrine, but I don't know that we are changing a procedure. I feel confident that this is something, maybe this needs to happen 3 weeks after the election. Maybe it doesn't have to happen the election day or prior to the election, but it's possible to do it alongside the hand count, alongside the machine counting. It happens partially anyway, and for different particular reasons. So we're not changing the results of the election. I can't picture at all being a lifetime voter and supporting my kids in that effort and everybody I know. I can't imagine that making someone not want to vote, or being in the way at the polls or anything. It's just not going to be that way. And we could determine that. The procedures that are set up could determine that it doesn't impede voting in any way. So I'm confused why we can't just take a hard look at it and get a second opinion. I'm busy doing that right now with health issues with my husband. I understand that. You take a hard look and you get a second opinion. This is important. Probably one of the more important things that we've done. We need our county to be united and say, yeah, awesome, it turned out great. Thank you. You know, sometimes you just have to allow that.
So in order to get an agenda item on the agenda, you need to put it in writing, and it has to go through the county attorney's office before it can be printed on the agenda. So I'm assuming that will be your next step, Ms. Judge?
Yep, and I'm willing to do some of the research that I've been wanting to have done. I'm willing to do some of that. So yes, I will do that.
Yeah, just
We have
remember
an
that
agenda
it has
coming
to go
up.
through the county attorney's office before it can be
Right.
put on the agenda. Anything
Get
you
some
want to add?
opinions.
No, thank you.
Okay. Thank you for being here.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
No, I just want to thank everybody for allowing us to be here. I so appreciate this opportunity to come together like this and discuss and debate these things openly. It's been been really refreshing, and I thank you so much. God bless you with your
Thank you.
decision.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank you for being civil to each other. That's always one of my wishes, is that we can come together, whether we are of the same opinion on any issue, but we can treat each other with respect, and I thank you for that. I think that you understand that this is emotional more than anything, and we feel, or I feel, I can only say I, because this seems to be a divisive issue, that our elections in Cochise County have been stellar, that our hand counts have always matched. And we don't pick which ones to hand count. You know, we don't say, well, this will be an easy one to do or that one. You know, so I'm sorry that you don't feel that we're doing the right job. I guess that's what hurts the most, is that I think that we have proven. We're not Ohio, we're not Maricopa County, we're not California. You know, our elections here, I feel, have just been above reproach. And many of you have worked at those elections. If there are problems, we need to fix them locally instead of looking at national issues and trying to get things all stirred up. You know, if you have a problem with what's going on at elections, probably 3 weeks before the election isn't the time to start screaming, but that doesn't mean it doesn't need to be fixed if you think there's something broken. So I thank you for being concerned. I don't know if you thought that we could make decisions today or not, but I need to make that clear, is that work sessions are not decision time. And everything that we do has to go through our county attorney's office in order to have you represented by us, because sometimes we as individuals have things that we want to do, and the county attorney has to keep us in the right lane so that we're doing things that are legal, whether or not it's what we prefer. So again, thank you, and this work session is over.